hopefully we'll give you something interesting today. As Kate said, I'm Tracy Scott. I'm from the Sociology department. I teach our intro course. What we're trying to do with this whole notion about evidence is help you all understand how important it is to understand different types of evidence and to understand when you use evidence that you use the right kind. Every department at Emory talks about evidence in different ways. So what Dr. Laderman and I are going to do today is talk about both the similarities and differences between sociology and religion. And we're going to talk about a common topic from the two perspectives. So you'll see how we have some overlaps, but also some differences. I want you to imagine that you've come across a group of 10 people who are sitting around smoking a drug. What would your reaction be to them? If you were a police officer, you would go and figure out if it was illegal, you might need to arrest them, right? What about if you were a friend? Okay, so if it was illegal and you were someone that didn't want to get in trouble, you might not join them or you might take it away. Yeah. A journalist might want to investigate the group and see what they're doing and why they're doing it and where they're doing it. What we're going to talk about today is how a sociologist would view this group and what they would want to do with the group, and how a religion scholar might approach the group. Every action, every decision you make is going to be based on evidence. If you're a friend, it's going to be a very different kind of evidence than if you're a police officer, right? And someday you all are going to be workers. You're going to move from the student role to the worker role, and every kind of organization and different type of job is going to require you to understand different types of evidence. So first I want to ask you, what kind of group did you picture when I said imagine a group sitting around smoking a drug? Did you picture the group at the top, possibly? This looks like a bunch of college students, right? Did you picture the group on the bottom? Does anyone have any idea what that group is? That is a bus with people smoking marijuana. It is a pot tour in Colorado. Does anyone know that about the laws in Colorado and Washington State? Marijuana is legal. Did anyone picture this group? Probably not. This is a group of people from the Native American church, and this is a peyote ceremony. And peyote is a drug that is used in the religious rituals of the Native American church. But what would a sociologist do with this group? Well, how does a sociologist want to understand this group? Well, that's what I'm going to tell you a little bit about. The first thing we would want to do is understand them. Not judge them, not try and, sort of say, is this good or bad? But we would want to understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. So we would need to know more about the drug use in that social context. And in order to do that, we would have to do what we call gathering empirical evidence. Empirical evidence is what is really important in sociology. So I want to tell you a little bit about sociology as a discipline. Sociology is a discipline that tries to explain aspects of reality. And what we try to explain is any kind of social aspect about the world. So sociologists can study basically any kind of group, any kind of social gathering, any way that a group influences individuals' behavior. So we focus on a particular aspect of life, social part of life. We don't approach it like a journalist where we go and ask a couple of people things and write a colorful story. What we do is we gather empirical evidence. Empirical evidence is rigorously gathered, systematic observations about whatever phenomenon it is we're studying. And usually we've got some kind of theory about the world and how the world works, and we're going to go gather systematic observations to see if social reality really works that way. You try to understand the group from the inside. You try to understand what things are like for people in the group, and usually the best way to do that is to go be part of the group. Why is there a peyote ceremony in the Native American church? Most likely, that ceremony would serve the purpose that Durkheim found in his research, right? So you'd have this gathering after maybe people had gone out and hunted and gotten food, and you come together and you have this big celebration, and you do things like smoke a drug. You do lots of things where the celebration is very emotional, it's very exuberant, there's lots of energy. And that energy he called collective effervescence. I love that notion. I mean, hopefully you know what effervescence means. It's kind of like bubbly, right? And when that happens, What happens after that, Durkheim talks about in terms of the group establishing a religion, is you develop rituals around this force. You develop a full religion that's actually an expression of the group itself. So these gatherings are sacred, they're ritualistic, and they end up providing social solidarity to the group. It's almost like the group's identity comes out in that gathering. And this, as a sociologist, this is what we would be interested in knowing. We wouldn't be trying to determine whether people's beliefs were true or not. We wouldn't be trying to say, is their faith good or bad? Is it real or not? That's not a level of life we would look at. We would look more at how does religion play a role in their lives, and how does the group itself work? How does those rituals work to help the group come together and be cohesive?
I'm coming at this from religious studies, from the Department of Religion, right, which is like political science or English or history. It's part of the college. You can major in the study of religion. We are a field with a lot of different methods and a lot of disciplinary perspectives. There's not just one. In fact, I wouldn't even attempt to try to define religion, because if we tried to do that, we wouldn't agree. So we're focused on a topic that's ambiguous and certainly highly charged in many ways. So the question of evidence comes from a variety of different perspectives. Including the sociology that Dr. Scott was describing. Thinking about evidence, what kinds of evidence might you be interested in if you were going to be an intellectual and be scholarly? But what kind of evidence might you be interested in other than the empirical, systematic kinds of evidence that would likely be used in sociology? I'm a historian. This is a central question in thinking about current phenomena. I'm sorry, I think history is essential for understanding the world that you're in, the world we're living in, to understanding the relationship between drugs and religion. Is there a relationship? You think that's historically sort of established over time? Do you think it's somewhat arbitrary and maybe in some ways hypocritical when we think about drugs in our society? You have a religious ritual taking place with a fairly disempowered, disenfranchised, suppressed religious culture, Native American, indigenous communities in the Americas. And so how do you reconstruct the past? What evidence do you use when most of the written evidence about this use of this plant is coming mostly from Christians and from missionaries who think, in terms of what they see as evidence, this is evidence of the devil. So evidence is very different for the Christian missionaries than it's going to be for us. We certainly know from archaeological evidence that the Aztec used peyote ritually for medicine and healing. And if it's not written down, it's going to be transmitted orally. Okay, so how do you trust that source over time? Again, as we're talking about a culture that is increasingly infringed upon and decimated over time, or nearly so. What is the plant? It's a cactus, a spineless cactus that has mescaline and a very strong hallucinogenic power. So there's that, and so that's a fascinating area too, whether you're scientifically minded or not, because right here in the Carlos Museum, you can go look at pre-Columbian artifacts, and some of those artifacts were actually used, many of them were used for religious ritual purposes, but some were especially associated with shamanism. And thinking about evidence, this is a fascinating interdisciplinary project where an anthropologist, an art historian, and someone in chemistry were all working together on like a shamanic pot in trying to understand its ritual use, its purposes, but also what were the chemicals that were inside of this. And so now we have the technologies to produce new kinds of evidence to make cases about, this long-standing use of hallucinogens in indigenous religious ritual settings. So there's also artistic and literary expressions or attempts to capture the ceremony. What's the purpose? You don't want to just talk about evidence in the abstract. It's like evidence to persuade. Evidence is used in the sciences differently than it is in the humanities.